Train travel is often seen as safe and routine, but sometimes it ends in disaster. In this video, we'll look at 5 of the most disturbing train crash deaths ever recorded. Real stories where ordinary days turned into scenes of unimaginable horror. These aren't just tragic accidents. They're unforgettable moments that left behind wreckage, grief, and haunting questions that still echo to this day. It was afternoon on November 17, 2023, in Brasília, Brazil. 37-year-old Julia de Albuquerque Vado stepped out of her apartment with a small but kind-hearted mission to donate a bag of clothes to a local thrift store. She told her mother she'd be back later that day, but she never came home. Julia lived with her 72-year-old mother, Ana Rosa. Over the years, their bond had only deepened. She boarded a city bus for a short, routine trip. The sky was clear, traffic was normal. Nothing seemed out of place. But as the bus neared a railroad crossing, something began to feel wrong. From the right, a train approached, its horn blaring, echoing across the open air like a warning. A nearby car, stopped just feet from the tracks, captured everything on video. Despite the horn, despite the clear view of the approaching train, the bus kept creeping forward. Julia had been sitting near the back. The force of the collision launched her through a shattered window. She landed on the tracks, right in the path of the oncoming train. There was no time to move. When emergency responders from the Brasília Fire Department arrived, they found her broken body near the train. The damage was overwhelming. The loss, irreversible. Julia was gone, but she wasn't the only one. The crash left behind a trail of pain. 5 others were injured. Nildete Anton Vitor, 58, suffered head trauma and broken bones. She was rushed to the hospital. Julio Bauteo Fernandez, 28, was found unconscious, his head injury so severe he barely clung to life. Janderson Rodriguez da Costa, 47, was lucky to escape with only cuts and bruises, but the horror of what he witnessed will haunt him forever. The bus driver, Pedro Dominese Campos, 42, was physically unharmed, but he experienced a complete psychological breakdown. A 19-year-old woman, whose name wasn't released, was also unharmed physically, but what she saw broke something inside her. She too had to be hospitalized for trauma. Police sealed off the area. Still, photos and videos leaked online. Scenes of twisted metal, broken glass, scattered debris, and a city stunned by a single, senseless decision. The video from the nearby car went viral within hours. People watched, over and over, asking the same question. Why didn't the bus stop? Ana Rosa, now alone in a home once filled with laughter, was devastated. She refused to call it an accident. To her, it was negligence. She blamed the driver for ignoring the train's warnings, for gambling with lives he had no right to risk. Julia had only stepped out that day to do something kind, something selfless, and she paid for it with her life. Ana remembered her daughter through tears. Julia was a fine art student at the University of Brasília. Creative, compassionate, deeply empathetic. In the days that followed, that light sparked a national reckoning. People demanded answers. What caused this? A mechanical failure? Human error? Or sheer recklessness? The video shows it clearly. The train sounded its horn for several seconds. The bus driver had time. But still, the bus moved forward. It was the evening of June 2, 2023, near Bahanaga Bazaar Station in Odisha, India. The Coromandel Express, one of the country's busiest trains, was racing along the tracks at nearly 130 kilometers per hour. At exactly 6:55 p.m., everything changed. Without warning, the Coromandel Express was switched off its main track. It was diverted straight onto a loop line. a dead-end route used only to park idle trains. And sitting on that track was a massive freight train fully loaded with iron ore. It wasn't moving. It had no chance to. The Coromandel slammed into it head-on. The force of the crash was catastrophic. The impact crushed the first few coaches like paper. Metal screeched. Glass exploded. 21 coaches flew off the tracks. Some flipped violently. Others were torn apart like tin in a storm. The general coaches, packed with unreserved passengers, bore the worst of it. People were thrown like rag dolls. But the horror didn't stop there. From the opposite direction, another train, the SMVT Bengaluru Howrah Express, was charging forward at almost the same speed. As it neared the wreckage, chaos was already unfolding. Crushed coaches from the Coromandel had spilled over into its path, and in a split second, the Bengaluru train collided with the debris. 3 more coaches derailed. In the span of seconds, it became a 3-train collision. Witnesses said it felt like a bomb had gone off. Smoke poured from shattered engines. Bodies were scattered across the tracks. Screams echoed across the fields. Local resident Gir Shankar Rath was among the first to arrive. He ran toward the crash, only to find a nightmarish scene. Smoke, overturned cars, the smell of diesel and blood in the air. He saw limbs. He saw children. One man, Tutubis, heard the thunderous crash from his village. When he reached the site, he spotted a small child crying alone. Later, he would find out that the child never made it. Rupam Banerjee remembered strangers, villagers, pulling people out of the wreckage, handing out water with shaking hands. Vandana Kaleda had just stepped out of the bathroom when her coach tilted violently. She was thrown off her feet. She landed in a pile of bodies. For one man, Suryeve, the pain went deeper. His mother and grandmother had been on the Coromandel. They were traveling to get medicine. After the crash, he searched through the mangled coaches all night, flashlight in hand, refusing to stop. He found his grandmother, alive, dazed, injured, but his mother was missing. The next morning, someone sent him a photo. He recognized her instantly. By nightfall, more than 1,200 workers had flooded the site. Rescue teams, doctors, firefighters. Over 100 ambulances lined the dirt roads. Buses came to transport the injured. Crews cut through jagged metal to reach the living. Some were unconscious, some were already gone. Others whispered for their families before going silent. Bodies lay beside the tracks, many unrecognizable. A local school became a morgue. Hospitals filled beyond capacity. Blood donations poured in, but it wasn't enough. By sunrise, the death toll had already reached 288. It would climb to 296 in the days that followed. Sudhanshu Sarangi of the Odisha Fire Services stood at the scene and said it plainly. He had never seen anything like this. In more than 2 decades, India had not faced a rail disaster this deadly. It was the 3rd worst in the country's long history, trailing only the Firozabad crash of 1995. Indian Railways uses an intricate electronic system to guide its 14,000 trains across more than 40,000 miles of track every single day. It's designed to prevent collisions. But on that night, something failed. The Coromandel Express was never supposed to be on that loop line. Officials began combing through the signal logs. They uncovered something chilling. The system had been altered. At first, they thought it was a malfunction, but suspicions quickly turned darker. Investigators found signs of tampering. Within weeks, 3 railway workers were arrested. Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited the site. He met with rescue teams. He spoke with survivors. He promised accountability. Families of the dead were offered compensation, about $12,000. The injured received less, but no amount of money could undo what had been done.
We are continuing to learn more about a deadly train crash in Plant City last night. 6 people died after a train collided with their SUV.
It was the evening of September 23, 2023 in Plant City, Florida, just 25 miles from Tampa. In a white 2020 Cadillac Escalade, a family of 7 was heading to a quinceañera celebration. Inside the SUV was 52-year-old Jose Guadalupe Hernandez, a seasoned truck driver who had safely traveled over 4 million miles in his lifetime. Beside him sat his wife, 50-year-old Anadelia. Their 3 children were in the back: 22-year-old Analia, a recent college graduate just beginning her adult life; 17-year-old Alyssa, bright and determined, with dreams of becoming a doctor; and 9-year-old Julian, the baby of the family, always playing outside with a smile that could soften anyone. Also along for the ride were Alyssa's best friend, Jacob Lopez, and Analia's boyfriend, Guillermo Moma. They were packed in together, dressed up, and in high spirits. At around 6:45 p.m., they reached a narrow stretch of road, Jim Leffler Circle. A quiet, unassuming railroad crossing cut through it. There were no warning gates, but something went terribly wrong. According to authorities, surveillance footage would later show the Escalade slowing, but never stopping. It crept forward, inch by inch, onto the tracks. At the very same moment, a freight train was barreling down at 55 miles per hour. The train's horn blared. Its lights flashed. Another driver nearby even honked in desperation. But the Escalade kept moving. The train slammed into the SUV at full speed. Sheriff Chad Chronister would later compare the wreckage to a soda can crushed underfoot. The Escalade was launched into the air, flipping violently, pieces of it breaking apart mid-air. It landed far from the rails, mangled, unrecognizable. 5 of the 7 passengers were ejected from the vehicle. They died on impact. Jacob, who worked at a local Chick-fil-A, was known for his easy smile and energy. He loved talking about his old Volkswagen Beetle and bringing coffee for his friends. His co-workers called him the kindest soul. Alyssa had once written in her school journal that she wanted to heal people with her hands. Analia had just graduated and was planning her next steps. Julian, just 9 years old, was still discovering the world, still forming the dreams that his older siblings had already begun chasing. Jose, the father, survived the initial impact. He was rushed to the hospital in critical condition. Doctors tried to stabilize him, but the damage was too severe. He died later that night, his life ending far from the driver's seat he had spent decades in, always delivering others safely to their destinations, until now. Only one person survived the crash. Guillermo, Analia's boyfriend, had been sitting in the front passenger seat. He too was thrown from the vehicle. His injuries were severe: a brain bleed, a bruised lung, a ruptured kidney. For a while, he was awake. He held his mother's hand. He whispered her name. Doctors said brain surgery wouldn't be needed, and though he remained in critical condition, there was a glimmer of hope. Just before the crash, he had texted his family. Almost at the party, then nothing. When his grandmother didn't hear back, she drove to the scene. What she found was worse than anything she could have imagined. The shock spread fast. Jose's niece, Leticia Hernandez, rushed to the crash site from Miami. She found scraps of clothing, a child's jewelry, pieces of lives that had been full only hours before. The exact cause of the crash is still under investigation. Video confirms the vehicle never stopped. No brakes, no hesitation, no explanation yet. Sheriff Chronister said even the word devastating felt inadequate. The responding officers, hardened by years of service, were shaken. These weren't just names on a report. This was a whole family, torn apart in seconds. A celebration replaced by silence, by tears, by questions no one could yet answer.
Rush hour, June 22, 2009, 2 Red Line Metro trains collided near the Fort Totten stop. 9 people died, 80 were injured in the deadliest crash in Metro's history.
It was June 22, 2009, a sweltering summer afternoon in Washington, D.C. Rush hour gripped the city as commuters packed onto the Red Line, trying to get home, to dinner, to their kids. Deep underground, train 112 pulled out of Tacoma Station, bound for Fort Totten. At the controls was 42-year-old Janice McMillan from Springfield, Virginia, a proud Metro employee who took her job seriously. Her passengers trusted her. She trusted the system. but the system failed her. Just ahead, train 214 sat motionless on the tracks, waiting for clearance. Metro's automatic control system should have flagged it, should have slowed train 112 down, but it didn't. The system falsely reported the tracks as clear. Janice rounded a curve at 45 miles per hour and saw the impossible. A train in her path. She had seconds. She hit the emergency brake, but there wasn't enough time. The collision was brutal. Steel screamed, glass exploded. The front car of train 112 crumpled like paper, riding up over train 214. Inside, chaos erupted. Passengers hurled through the air, cries of terror echoing in the tunnel. 9 people died. Dozens were injured, some permanently. Janice McMillan was killed instantly. Investigators confirmed she did everything right. She simply didn't stand a chance. Among the victims was 29-year-old Veronica Dubose, a mother of 2 on her way to nursing class. Her children, Raja and Ava, were raised by their grandmother after the crash. Carolyn, their grandmother, was in the hospital when the news broke. She had no idea her daughter was on that train until her other daughter told her. Carolyn ripped out her IV lines and ran screaming through the halls. Another life lost. 23-year-old Lavanda Nikki King, mother of 2, building her dream of opening a hair salon. Her boys were too young to understand. They ask about her now. Her mother answers what she can. Her sister Kanda hasn't taken public transit since. "It broke something in me," she says. The crash exposed deeper failures. Federal investigators found Metro had ignored years of warnings. The 1000 series train cars had been flagged as unsafe after a 2004 incident. They were known to crumble in collisions, but nothing changed. The faulty track circuit, the very thing that was supposed to prevent this, malfunctioned. It wasn't just human error, it was institutional neglect. Afterward, Metro took action. The aging train cars were finally retired. Newer, stronger 7000 series trains replaced them. A new safety commission was created. A new general manager promised transparency. And for over 9 years, no fatal crash caused by system failure has occurred. It was the morning of September 29, 2016, in Hoboken, New Jersey. There was Fabiola Bitar de Kroon, a 34-year-old lawyer from Brazil. She had just dropped her daughter off at daycare, kissed her goodbye, exchanged a few words with the staff, and left. Her mind was likely on errands, dinner, maybe a phone call she had to make later. It was just a Thursday, just another ordinary morning. But at 8:45 a.m., the ordinary turned violent. New Jersey Transit train number 1614 had departed Spring Valley earlier that morning, moving steadily down the Pascack Valley line. It made every scheduled stop. At the front was a cab car. At the back, a diesel engine pushing it forward. There was nothing unusual in its journey until it approached its final destination, Hoboken Terminal. Trains are supposed to crawl into the station. They slow to a safe, near-idle speed before they kiss the bumper block at the end of the line. But this train didn't slow down. Witnesses said it charged in. Too fast. Much too fast. The kind of speed that makes your stomach drop just watching. And then it happened. In a deafening instant, the train slammed into the bumper. The impact wasn't just a collision, it was devastation. The front car tore through the barrier, through steel and concrete, and kept going, right into the terminal's waiting area. It brought down metal beams, shattered glass, and crushed part of the century-old ceiling. Inside, passengers were hurled forward. People screamed. Water burst from broken pipes. Electric sparks danced in the chaos. On the platform, where people had been standing only moments before, debris rained from above. Fabiola had been standing there, waiting, watching, just a few steps from safety. The collapsing ceiling struck without warning. Heavy debris crashed down, pinning her. She was still alive, but trapped, her body broken under rubble. Amid the screams and sirens, a college student named Raman Perkins had just arrived behind the station. He had been running late for class, cutting through the back alley. People fled past him, running in the opposite direction, but something in him wouldn't let him turn away. He ran toward the smoke, toward the sound. Inside the wreckage, the scene was unreal, like a war zone. Water sprayed down from above, lights flickered, cries echoed from every direction. Raman joined the few brave souls trying to help. He moved beams, lifted debris, and then, beneath a pile of metal and concrete, he saw her, just the tips of her shoes, motionless. It was Fabiola. She was still breathing, barely. Raman dropped to his knees beside her. He reached for her hand. He spoke to her gently, telling her to think of her daughter, to hold on, to stay. Her eyes moved. She tried to respond, but her voice was gone. Still, she fought. She fought with everything she had left, but her injuries were too much. Before emergency crews could reach her, Fabiola slipped away. She was the only person who didn't survive that morning. In total, 114 others were injured, some critically. Some required surgery. Others walked away with bruises and scars that would never fully heal. The engineer, Thomas Gallagher, was among the injured. When questioned, he said he remembered nothing. One moment he was pulling into Hoboken, the next, everything went black. Weeks later, doctors discovered Gallagher had a condition he never knew about. Sleep apnea. It's a silent illness, robbing the body of oxygen during sleep, leaving its victims chronically exhausted, sometimes dangerously so. He had been cleared to work earlier that year, cleared to drive, cleared to carry the lives of passengers like Fabiola. But that morning, fatigue overtook him. By 2018, federal investigators concluded that Gallagher had blacked out due to his undiagnosed condition. But he wasn't the only one at fault. The systems that were supposed to prevent this didn't. The terminal still used outdated bumper blocks. Automatic braking systems common in modern transit weren't in place. New Jersey Transit had a sleep apnea screening program, but somehow Gallagher had slipped through. It was a failure layered in negligence. After the crash, changes finally came, but far too late for Fabiola. The speed limit into the terminal was cut in half, from 10 miles per hour to 5. A second crew member became mandatory when trains approached the station. Structural repairs to the terminal continued for years, not finishing until 2019. But for those who lived through that morning, the emotional rebuilding hasn't ended. Fabiola's story didn't fade. She wasn't just a name in a report. She held a master's degree in business. She had once worked at SAP, bright, respected, admired. She had recently moved to Hoboken with her husband and daughter. She had pressed pause on her career to be there for her family. Her daycare staff remembered her as the mother who always smiled. Raman visited the hospital afterward. When he found out she hadn't survived, he was devastated. But he took comfort in one thing: she hadn't been alone. He said he saw peace in her eyes in those final moments. And maybe that's something her family will hold on to, even in the face of their unimaginable loss. As for Gallagher, he was fired. But in 2023, a court reinstated him. Today, he still works for New Jersey Transit, though only on non-passenger trains and under strict supervision. A crash that lasted seconds has left years of aftermath. One mother gone, a family shattered. Over 100 injured, hundreds more haunted, and a transit system forced to confront the consequences of what it didn't fix in time. Because sometimes, it's not just the metal that breaks, it's the trust too.